Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. It happened in the middle of someone else's life. Not mine. At least that's what I kept telling myself. The string lights, the fake smiles, the disposable cups. It was Dennis's party. Dennis's crowd. Dennis's night. I was just a prop someone forgot to put away. I wasn't even supposed to go. The only reason I did was because the alternative was silence. And silence with Marnie had become deafening. She had been distant for weeks, like she was quietly evacuating our marriage room by room. I'd hear her laugh at things I wasn't part of. She'd get texts she wouldn't explain. And when she did talk to me, it was like watching someone try to remember a language they once spoke fluently. I stayed quiet. I always stayed quiet. I thought that made me patient. Or strong. Or maybe just scared of what I'd hear if I finally asked. The party was packed. Sweaty bodies. Indie music. Scented candles trying and failing to mask cheap beer and cologne. I stood near the hallway, sipping something I didn't want, while Marnie wandered through the house like she owned the place. Like she belonged to it more than she belonged to me. At some point, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Normally, I'd ignore it, but the noise in my head needed a break. So I slipped down the hallway to answer. It was a wrong number. That's all. A useless call that lasted 22 seconds. That's how long it took to miss the moment everything shifted. When I turned to go back, I paused. I heard something, laughter. Marnie's? Maybe. And then another voice. Lower. Male. Followed by silence. Not the kind that happens when a song ends, but the kind that happens when people stop talking because they know someone's listening. I stepped out just in time to see a door at the far end of the hallway click shut. It wasn't curiosity that made me walk toward it. It was dread. Pure, slow-building dread that began in my stomach and spread into my bones. Every step felt like I was walking toward something that already happened. Like I was late to the betrayal. I didn't knock. I didn't call out. I just stood there, hand hovering near the doorknob, listening to the muted sound of voices on the other side. I couldn't make out words. Just the tone. Comfortable. Familiar. Private. The door was locked. I knew better than to try it. I stood there like an idiot for maybe 30 seconds before walking away, pretending I needed the bathroom, pretending I didn't feel what I felt, pretending the churning in my chest wasn't the truth finally waking up. I left the party 10 minutes later without saying goodbye. Marnie didn't come home that night. Her excuse? I stayed at a friend's. No details. No apologies. Just a casual, practiced shrug. I nodded. Like always, because that's what I do. But something changed that night, and it wasn't just her. The next morning, I woke up on the couch to the sound of our front door clicking shut. It was 6:42 a.m. The sun hadn't fully risen, and the street outside was still quiet. I sat up, blinking through the weight of no sleep, and there she was, Marnie, stepping out of her shoes like she was coming back from brunch, not from wherever she'd vanished to last night. What caught me first wasn't her face. It was the dress. Or rather, the lack of it. She wasn't wearing the dark green slip she left the house in. Instead, she had on a plain hoodie and leggings I hadn't seen before, neither of which were hers. I said nothing. She looked at me, didn't flinch, didn't explain, didn't smile. She just said, "Couldn't sleep at Katie's. The couch sucks." Katie, right? The magical friend who somehow became the catch-all explanation for her absences. If I'd kept track of every time Marnie had stayed at Katie's, I could probably map out a second relationship timeline, one that didn't include me. She walked past me like I wasn't even there, like I was a floor lamp, and went straight to the bathroom. The door shut behind her and the shower turned on. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not rage, not grief, just a sudden, overwhelming awareness that I was living with a stranger who no longer felt the need to lie convincingly. I sat there, phone in my hand, staring at the last texts I'd sent her the night before. "Where are you? Did you leave? Are you okay?" All left on read. No replies. No explanations. She'd ignored me until it was convenient not to. I opened her location. Still off. For months now she had claimed it must have glitched, or drained battery, or restarted on its own. I believed her every time. But in that moment, watching steam pour out from under the bathroom door, I didn't believe anything anymore. Later that day, I decided to ask. I didn't confront. I don't know how to do that. Instead, I waited until we were folding laundry together. Neutral space. Safe timing. I kept my voice light, like I was just curious. Hey, what happened last night? You left kind of fast. She didn't even look up. Yeah, I wasn't really feeling it. Brandon offered a ride, and Katie was closer to his place, so, Brandon. I nodded like that made perfect sense, even though every word she said sat on top of the next like lies stacked too loosely. I didn't know who Brandon really was, but apparently he was close enough to Katie, and close enough to offer rides to married women without bothering to say hi to their husbands. She never asked what I did after she left. Never asked if I was okay. Never asked if I noticed she was gone. And the part that really cracked me? She hummed while folding my shirt. Like nothing had shifted. Like nothing needed to be said. Like I hadn't stood outside a locked door the night before with my heart screaming what my mouth was too afraid to say. I didn't sleep that night either. 2 nights later, I was alone again. Marnie had gone out for drinks with coworkers, which had recently become her favorite phrase. It always came with a vague shrug, the clink of perfume bottles, and that same dismissive air like she didn't even need me to acknowledge it. I didn't ask who the coworkers were. I didn't ask where they were going. By then, I'd learned that questions were treated like accusations, and accusations turned into lectures about how insecure I'd become. But that night, something unusual happened. She left her laptop open on the kitchen counter. Normally, Marnie was religious about closing everything, locking every device, double-checking. But in her rush, or maybe just her growing apathy, she forgot. And it was open to her email. For a long time, I just stood there, staring at it from across the room like it was a bomb I wasn't trained to touch. My heart raced. My palms itched. I knew it was wrong. I knew what kind of husband snoops through his wife's private things. But then again, what kind of wife makes her husband feel like a stranger in his own house? So I sat down. I didn't have to guess the password. She used the same one for everything, her childhood dog's name, followed by the year she graduated high school. I typed it. It worked. At first, everything seemed normal. Work emails, promotions, a few newsletters. Then I searched the name Brandon. Dozens of threads. Most were short, clipped messages. But some were different. Late-night timestamps. Subject lines like, "Last night was unreal," and "Still thinking about your hands." My breath caught. I clicked, half hoping I'd misunderstood. I hadn't. The emails were laced with casual intimacy, private jokes, references to nights they'd spent together, and not just recent ones. This had been going on for months, maybe longer. He called her Mar, a name she hadn't let me use in years because she said it felt childish. They talked about hotels, about timing, about how much longer they could keep this quiet. That's when I realized the party wasn't the beginning. It wasn't even the middle. It was just the moment I finally stopped being blind. I read until I couldn't see straight. I read until my hands shook so hard I thought I'd drop the laptop. I closed it quietly, like if I made too much noise, the reality would become more real. She walked in around midnight, hair a little tousled, lipstick smudged, eyes bright like she'd just won something. She smelled like a different cologne. Not hers, not mine. Someone else's skin on her clothes. "Hey," she said flatly, kicking off her shoes. "You're up late." I nodded. Couldn't sleep. She didn't notice anything. Didn't sense the shift. And I realized in that moment, she wasn't even trying anymore. She wasn't scared of being caught. She didn't think I had it in me to look, to question, to act. And maybe she was right. I lay in bed that night beside her and stared at the ceiling, feeling like a ghost in my own life. The kind of ghost that haunts no one but himself. She turned over and mumbled something about being tired. Her breathing slowed. She slept peacefully. And I just listened. Because when you know the truth, but pretend you don't, every breath they take sounds like betrayal. I thought I'd already hit the bottom. Thought reading those emails had drained me of the last traces of hope I was holding on to. But I didn't know that heartbreak has layers. You don't fall once, you keep falling again and again through different versions of betrayal. And just when you think there's nothing left to hurt, something new digs deeper. It was a Sunday afternoon. Marnie was out running errands. Her new catch-all phrase that had replaced actual plans. I had tried distracting myself with a movie, then tried cleaning, then just sat on the edge of our bed staring at the closet door. Her side was neat, organized. There was a new jacket hanging, one I'd never seen before. I used to compliment her new clothes. Now I just cataloged them like evidence. I wasn't planning to snoop again. But then my phone buzzed. It was from our shared cloud account. A random notification saying new media had been uploaded. We had set it up years ago, back when things were good. Photos we took would auto-sync to the same album. Vacation shots, dinner selfies, little things. I'd forgotten all about it. There were 3 new photos. I opened the app slowly, bracing myself like someone checking a trap they didn't remember setting. And then I saw them. The first was blurry, a mirror selfie in a hotel bathroom. I recognized the necklace she wore, but not the place. Not the person standing behind her, half visible. A man, shirtless, tattoo on his collarbone. The second photo hit harder. Marnie lying on a bed, her hair splayed across a pillow, eyes closed, smiling. She wasn't wearing much, and her hand was resting on someone's chest. Same tattoo, same room. But it was the third photo that finally cracked something in me. It was just a picture of her hand. But on her finger, my wedding ring was gone. And in its place was a thin silver band I'd never seen before. I don't know why, but that stung the most. She had taken off our symbol, replaced it for someone else, and still had the audacity to come home, wear it again, and pretend nothing had changed. I didn't even realize I was shaking. My hands felt numb. I sat there, staring at the photos, wondering how many others never made it to the cloud. How many lies were layered into her days, her texts, her excuses. And then a thought came to me. Sudden, sharp, almost laughable in its simplicity. She had no idea I'd seen any of it. For all her sneaking around, she'd slipped. Her arrogance or carelessness or just plain boredom had left a trail. And now I had proof, actual, indisputable proof. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was right. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I printed them, one by one, on real paper. I didn't text them to myself. I didn't screenshot or email or save them digitally. I wanted to hold them, to feel the weight of her betrayal in my hands. By the time she got home, I'd already placed them neatly on the kitchen counter. No note, no message, just the pictures, like a silent offering to the truth she never thought I'd find. She walked in carrying a grocery bag and paused when she saw them. Her eyes flicked to mine, but I didn't say a word. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For once, Marnie had no script prepared. And I just walked past her. No yelling, no accusations, not even tears. I didn't need answers anymore. I'd stopped needing them the second I saw that ring on someone else's finger. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't slam a door or give her one final speech. I just left. With nothing but my keys and wallet, I stepped out of the house like a man walking away from a slow-burning fire, knowing he couldn't put it out, knowing he'd choke to death if he stayed. I drove aimlessly for hours, past gas stations and closed diners, neighborhoods I didn't recognize, streets that blurred into one another. It was strange how quiet the world felt compared to the noise in my chest. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a destination. I just knew I couldn't be there. Not in that house, not next to her, not with those pictures still sitting on the counter like some sick family photo. Around midnight, I pulled into the parking lot of a cheap roadside motel, the kind with flickering signs and rooms that smell like cleaning spray and old regret. The clerk didn't ask questions. I handed over my card, signed something I didn't read, and took the key. Room 208. That number is permanently etched into my memory now. Inside, the bed was stiff, the curtains half broken, the television already humming static. I sat down and stared at the wall for what felt like hours. My phone buzzed, then again. It was Marnie. First a text, "Where are you?" Then, "Can we talk?" Followed by a string of missed calls and finally a voicemail I couldn't bring myself to listen to. I watched her name appear again and again like a bad signal you can't block. I didn't reply. That night I finally cried. Not like in movies, no sobbing into my hands or yelling into a pillow. Just quiet tears. The kind that creep up without permission. That sting your eyes until you blink and realize something's broken that you can't fix. But here's the thing. Somewhere between 3 a.m. and sunrise, something inside me shifted. Not healed, just shifted. It was like my mind had spent months holding in smoke, and I finally cracked a window. I started remembering things. Tiny things, like how she used to pretend to fall asleep during movies so she wouldn't have to talk. How her phone was always face down. How her hugs had started feeling more like excuses than affection. I remembered how often I'd blamed myself for her coldness, her distance, her absence. Like I was some burden she had to endure. But I wasn't the one who lied. I wasn't the one sneaking around. And maybe I wasn't perfect, but I damn sure didn't deserve to be discarded like a bad habit. The next morning, I turned off my phone. Not airplane mode. Not silent. I powered it down completely. I didn't want to hear her voice. I didn't want to read her words. I wanted silence, real, uninterrupted silence, for the first time in years. And in that silence, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her spin the story. I wasn't going to crawl back so she could twist this into something mutual. Something vague like, we grew apart. No. She made a choice and I finally had the nerve to make mine. I left that motel with a new mission. Not revenge. Not some dramatic confrontation. Just clarity. I was going to expose the truth, not to the world, not even to her, but to the people who mattered. To the ones who still thought we were the happy couple. The perfect match. The ones who had no idea what she'd become behind closed doors. Because the truth, it doesn't need to scream to be heard. It just needs to be shown. I never intended to involve anyone else. I wasn't looking to cause chaos or start a war. But sometimes the truth has a way of slipping through the cracks, especially when it's been hidden for so long. And in my case, the moment I let one person in, the entire web of lies she'd built began to unravel faster than I ever could have planned. It started with a message to Rachel, Marnie's sister. I always liked Rachel. She was sharp, blunt, and had a built-in radar for nonsense. Over the years, she'd occasionally make little jokes about how Marnie lived in her own version of reality. But I never paid much attention. I guess I was too deep in the illusion to see what she already suspected. I didn't say much in the message. Just asked if she had time to talk. She called me 10 minutes later. The silence on the line after I told her what I found. The emails, the photos, the man with the tattoo, was unlike anything I'd ever heard. Then she muttered, "You have proof." I did. I forwarded her the photos. The printed ones were still at my place, but I'd taken pictures of them with my phone before I left. Her reaction wasn't what I expected. No gasps, no angry rants. Just a long, quiet sigh and then, I knew something was off. But this? Jesus, Marnie. She told me to give her a few days. I didn't ask why. What I didn't know was that Rachel had plans of her own. 2 nights later, I got a call from Dennis, the same coworker whose party we had gone to, where this entire mess began. His voice was tight, almost cautious. He said, "Hey man, are you okay? I heard what happened." I froze. Apparently, Rachel had shared the truth, not just with a few people, but with the whole damn circle. Family, friends, even a few of Marnie's coworkers. I don't know how she did it or what exactly she said, but it hit like a tidal wave. One moment, Marnie was still walking around like she had everyone fooled. The next, her entire social sphere was whispering. And then came the message that made my stomach twist. From Marnie, "What the hell did you do?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She already knew it hadn't come from me. She called me 5 times that night. I didn't answer. Then she started sending long texts, paragraphs full of half apologies and twisted logic. It wasn't what it looked like. We were in a rough place. You weren't even trying anymore. She even had the audacity to say, "I never meant to hurt you." That last one broke me, because she had meant it. Every lie, every night she disappeared, Every moment she looked me in the eyes and pretended nothing was wrong. Those were choices. And choices have consequences. The next day, Rachel texted me again. "She's melting down," she wrote, crying, begging me to tell people you made it up. But they've seen the photos. She can't lie her way out this time. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt empty. Like the final layer of denial had been stripped away and all that was left was the quiet aftermath. But the real twist came that weekend. Brandon, the man she cheated with, was apparently married. His wife reached out to me. She found my number through Rachel. She said, "I think we both deserve the truth." And just like that, the damage spread farther than Marnie ever anticipated. When I first picked up the phone and heard her voice, Brandon's wife, I wasn't prepared for how calm she sounded. There was no yelling, no dramatic accusations, just a steady voice with the kind of quiet heartbreak you only hear from someone who's lived with suspicion for far too long. Her name was Elise, and she told me, almost apologetically, "I think we need to compare timelines." I agreed to meet her in person. It felt strange, surreal even, driving to a coffee shop to sit across from a woman whose life had been wrecked by the same people who wrecked mine. She was already there when I arrived, hair pulled back, no makeup, hands wrapped tightly around a paper cup. Her eyes looked like mine felt, hollow, strained, but somehow alert. We got straight to it. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through screenshots, messages, calls, receipts. And that's when the true depth of the affair started to show itself. This wasn't some flirty, once-in-a-while betrayal. It was structured, maintained, hidden with purpose. Brandon and Marnie had been using hotel rooms under fake names. They had a shared prepaid phone. They even had a recurring Airbnb reserved under a friend's account. Elise showed me bank statements where Brandon had been withdrawing cash weekly, always the same amount, always around the same time. And then she said it, the thing that flipped my stomach completely. They talked about leaving us. Together. She showed me a message. From Marnie. It read, "Once I figure out the money, I'm in. I'm done pretending. He won't fight me on it, he never fights anything." And Brandon had replied, "Good, because I'm tired of sneaking around. She's suspicious again." I stared at the words for a long time, not because I didn't believe them, but because it confirmed something I had refused to admit to myself. They didn't just cheat. They built an exit plan. They studied my passivity like a weapon and decided I wouldn't stop them. I felt exposed in a way I never had before, like everything soft and loyal inside me had been used against me. Elise reached across the table and rested a hand near mine. She said, "You didn't imagine it. You didn't deserve it. And you're not crazy." We sat there for a while without speaking. Just two strangers who had been dragged into the same wreckage by people we once trusted with everything. And then Elise leaned back, eyes narrowed. "I'm not letting them walk away clean," she said. I didn't know what she meant yet, but her voice had that certain edge, the kind that didn't tremble. Later that night, back in the motel, I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, still processing it all. I had spent so much time blaming myself, thinking maybe I hadn't been enough. Maybe I'd failed her somehow. But now I saw it for what it was, manipulation start to finish. The phone buzzed again. Marnie. She hadn't stopped. More missed calls. More desperate texts. But now there was a new message. "Can we meet? Please. I need to explain." I stared at the screen and finally typed one word. "When?" Because for the first time since this began, I wasn't scared of hearing her lies. I was ready to make her say them out loud, while I stared her in the eyes. And I was bringing Elise with me. The meeting place was her suggestion. A quiet, almost too nice cafe tucked behind a bookstore, like she thought the charm of it would soften what she knew was coming. She picked a table near the back, already sitting when I arrived. She stood when she saw me, hesitant, eyes red, face pale. I noticed her hands shaking as she reached for her drink. "I didn't think you'd come," she said softly. "I didn't come alone," I replied. And right then, Elise stepped in from the doorway and took the seat beside me. Marnie's face went white. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. For a second, I think she realized she wasn't going to be able to perform this the way she wanted. There were no theatrics, no raised voices. I didn't accuse. Elise didn't threaten. We let her talk. And Marnie, she tried. She stumbled through a mess of half-truths and regrets, saying things like, I got lost, and it wasn't supposed to happen like this. But she never apologized without adding something to shift the blame. It was always about how I drifted, how I stopped being present, how I didn't notice her falling apart. Elise finally interrupted. Calm. Brutal. You had an entire second life. This wasn't drifting, it was digging. You dug your way out of 2 marriages and expected us not to notice. Marnie's face crumbled. But the moment that sealed it, the moment that freed me, was when she finally stopped lying. For a split second, the masks dropped. I didn't think he'd leave, she said, glancing at me. You were always so quiet. I thought I'd have time to figure it out. And that was it. She admitted it. She thought I was too weak to walk, too passive to disappear, too meek to stand up. And yet there I was, sitting across from her, unshaken, unmoved, and no longer hers. I stood up first. Elise followed. Marnie didn't chase us. She just sat there, small, drowning in the weight of her own decisions. The same woman who used to control every room now looked like someone trying not to vanish into the wallpaper. Outside, the sun hit my face and I took my first deep breath in weeks. Elise and I walked in silence for a block before she smiled, small and genuine. Feels good, doesn't it? And strangely, it did. Not because I got revenge, not because she suffered, but because I finally stopped making excuses for someone who would never fight for me. These days, I'm still healing, still figuring things out. I found a new place. I sleep better. I've started reading again. Small things, but they feel like mine. All of it feels mine now. Marnie still reaches out every now and then. Texts I don't answer, calls I don't return. But I've said what needed to be said, in the loudest way possible, by moving on without her. That's the end of my story. If you've ever had a moment where someone finally showed you exactly who they were, and you chose yourself instead, tell me in the comments. Which part of the story stuck with you most? You've been watching Reddit Confessions. If you made it this far, like the video, hit subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to remember their worth. Your story doesn't end with betrayal. Sometimes, that's just where it finally begins.